Years ago, I was told by somebody that I'm a very negative person. And that just really rankled with me because I have always thought of myself as a positive, happy person. And I've maintained that, I'm this hopeless optimist. And it really rankled and it just kind of rubbed me wrong and just kind of has bugged me over the years because it's like, I thought you knew me, how could you say such a thing? And so it just didn't fit this identity that I had. And I think it's interesting. I recently was reminded of this movie. I don't know if you've ever watched The Wizard of Oz, this old movie. I know I'm really dating myself, and it's before my time even, but it was definitely out when I was a kid. But spoiler alert, this movie's decades and decades old, so too bad if this spoils the movie for you. But Dorothy's on her quest. She has her companions with her. They're trying to find this wizard who has the answers and can help her find her way back home. And so they go into the threshold where the wizard is, and they go in there, and there's this booming, powerful voice, and this giant green, monstrous head, and there's flames, and the whole place is shaking, and there's smoke, and, it is this fearsome thing, and they are, of course, terrified, and who dares disturb the wizard, and what do you, and so they are just terrified and just want to bolt and run, but, she wants to summon up her courage. Anyway, they got this little tiny dog, and the dog goes over, and there's this curtain on the side, and the dog just pulls this curtain aside, and there's this little old man back there, and he's pulling ropes and working levers and turning wheels that's making all the smoke, all the booming voice, all the fire, all the projections, all of that kind of stuff. And he's like, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain, and he's trying to be the wizard. And he, of course, can't keep up the farce because he has been uncovered, And so now that they know, now they just realize this whole thing is this whole big theatrical thing, and it's not real. So fast forward a few years since I was told what I was told about me being a negative person. And in recent years, I've really been just digging into who and what am I and why and what is it all about, and just it's like an archaeological dig, and it's been fascinating. And I realized that this person was so right. I have been all my life a negative person. I've had a positive outlook and a cheerfulness and a happiness, but despite my hopeless optimism, there has always been this thing that's, as I've learned, this goes back to early childhood. There is this identity of, I called it the Murphy's Law of life for a long time, but I'd go into any situation, and before I even got to it, I would project what are all the possible worst case scenarios. I used to do project work, and the other guys were always like, Ricky, what were you, some super Boy Scout or something? Because anytime we come across some sort of situation and it's like, oh no, what are we going to do? I'd pull out the tool or the part or I'd know exactly what we needed to do. And they're like, how do you always know? How do you always have all the stuff? And because I've gone through life with this negative outlook in that I've gone in everything, and I think I still do to a certain degree. It's not one of those things you just snap your fingers and it's gone, but figuring out what are all the worst case scenarios, how can things go wrong? And I thought it was, me being positive and being prepared. But what it actually was is that even though I was prepared, my thought was, all right, I'll go into it and I figure out the worst case scenario, but if it happens, it's cool because I'm ready for it. And I've got the tools, I figured out the plan, whatever. And if it doesn't, if it goes according to plan and things go well, then I'm jazzed, that's awesome. And so big bonus, and that was kind of the way I kind of laughed it off and explained it all. And so it's almost like this Boy Scout prepared superhero sort of aspect of going into things and having thought it all through and being ready for everything, which is really handy. A lot of times our childhood traumas and stuff give us certain kind of escalated powers, essentially, of things that we can really handle certain kind of situations or think things through in a special way and all that kind of stuff. There's all that kind of stuff that gives us those things, that gives us those abilities to manage kind of situations that we had really been subjected to or for a long time or during those formative years. But that's the whole thing, is like, this was my thing, was going into situations expecting that is going to go south, that is going to be bad, it's going to fall apart, it's going to not go according to plan. And so I was ready for that, was able to deal with it, had all the stuff I need, take it on the cut, and it's like, no big deal, because this is what I expect. And so I maintain this cheerful attitude about it and go through and take care of all this stuff. But the underlying thing, the man behind the curtain, right, was that, sure, there's the smoke and the fire and the booming voice and the theatrics that looked impressive and are awfully handy sometimes, but in reality, there's this little kid inside of me that thinks things are not going to go right. Things will go awry, things will fall apart, or if I do get what I want, if things go well, then that's going to be taken away from me or somehow just fall apart later. And man, as I dug into that and realized that's what's really going on, it's like, oh man, the poor little kid in me, how messed up is that I've gone through life trying to maintain this positive outlook and make the best out of everything. And it's basically, I'm a good survivor. I'm good at adapting to bad situations. I'm good at handling things that are just going wrong left and right. But the reality is, I'm a kid who wants things and doesn't expect that I'll ever have them. Or if I do, I'll have them taken away. And that's a whole nother story too, later on, just digging deeper into that. But it's been such an eye-opener. And the way this has played out in so many ways in my life. And the thing is, it's just like, these are only some of the layers. And it comes down to this thing that, guess what? Nothing is ever what we think it is. When it comes to humans, or the things we're perceiving and dealing with in life, nothing is ever the way it is. The words we use and other people's use often have nothing to do with the actual feelings and the fears that people have. And a lot of times it's a smokescreen or a distraction or a diversion. And what's really going on is not being voiced. And this person is handling situations. We all do it to a certain degree. We distract, we divert, we avoid, whatever all these different things are, we maneuver through all this stuff. And so all of this stuff that we think is just normal is only normal to us because we've been doing it our whole lives. This whole thing where I thought I had this Murphy's Law life and I thought I had this positive outlook. Yeah, sure, I'm a hopeless optimist, but when you get right down to it, the actual belief, the identity that I've been carrying around all my life is that I'm hopeful. I really want things to go well. I really want to be able to have what I want in life, but the reality of it is, I haven't thought that was going to ever happen. And if it did, that'd be taken away. And there's, plenty of story to that. Probably dig into that in other videos and stuff too, but it's just kind of scratching the surface on this. And it's just, boy, I'm so glad that somebody brought up that movie the other day, because I keep thinking about it, because it is so appropriate to just being a human. We can put on the whole display, all the theatrics, all the booming voice, we've got it, we're in control, yeah, we're good at this, and no problem, and whatever it is we're doing. But the reality of it is, we're little kids inside these adult bodies, and we don't always know what we're doing. We're usually scared to death, or we got these stories we tell ourselves about how things are going to work out or not work out, or what we get to have or don't have, and just all of that stuff. And it usually has nothing to do with what we're saying, and usually has nothing to do with what we think our identity is. And if we were to say, well, here's my motto, my mission statement by how I operate life, we have put a spin on it. And it's a rare thing, I think, when we really call it what it is. And, usually we think we're something better than we are, or we put some positive spin because we have to survive, or our whole world will crumble, right? Just like that wizard behind the curtains, that little old man that, pay no attention to the man behind the curtains, pull those curtains back, pay attention to the thundering voice and the fire and the smoke and the way everything shakes. That's the real guy. I'm just standing here and minding my own business. And that's kind of what our lives are as adults, as big kids in adult bodies. we're just a big game of smoke and mirrors. And most of the time, we're not really even aware of it. We're not even really aware of it. Or if we are, we just vaguely are. Or sometimes we have these moments where we think, what's wrong with me? Or, or just, I want different. Why aren't things different? Whatever it is, these little tiny niggling voices down there that we don't always listen to, and they pop up here and there in our lives. We just kind of push them away and don't face them. And they are the ones asking the questions that we need to really face in life. Like, who am I? And just dig right down. And what it boils down to is, who do you want to be? And guess what? You're not a little kid anymore. We're the boss of our lives. We can tell ourselves, we can give ourselves permission to do and be what we want to be. The things that we tell ourselves that are all behind of, I can't and I don't, and it's not going to happen, and I don't get to, whatever it is, all those things, or I should, or I should, or I should, all of those kind of things are not our voice, not our heart, not our soul. They're our programming. And it's wild. And it's so enlightening. And I tell you, once you start to face certain things in life, then it all starts to fall down, and you realize there was nothing to fear here. There was no fearsome wizard back here. It's just a man behind the curtain, a kid behind the curtain. And there's nothing to actually fear, and we can start building our lives and building our identity and going after what we want to, and dismantling the things that are holding us back, and all those lines of code, or all those different phrases of things that we tell ourselves all the time, all the little self-lies, all the self-talk stuff that keep us down. Anyway, as you can probably tell, I find it fascinating and exciting, because I'm changing who I am. I am changing the way I look at the world, and I'm moving from the spot of I can't and I shouldn't and I'm not allowed and all that stuff, or I'm waiting for permission, or it's just not going to work out, into something a whole mess different. Not mess, but a whole a whole not mess different. A big pile, a good pile of not the same as it always has been. So anyway, there's better for us out there, in here, all around us. And the stuff we've been telling ourselves all our lives, we need to start questioning. If we haven't already, if you already are, super. I'm so glad for you, and I just wish you more, because it just gets better and better as you start unlocking and opening up whole new doorways, whole new rooms, flipping the lights on, turning the music on, cueing the glitter and confetti, whatever, but not in your salad. That's my last video. Anyway, it's there's good stuff out there for us, guys. And man, we can just give ourselves permission to go after it. Give ourselves permission to look for it. Give ourselves permission to see it, and to see the man behind the curtain, the little old wizard, the little kid that's behind us, who's, working all the theatrics. And we can do it for fun if we want to, but we don't have to do it for survival. We don't have to do it to keep up this idea, this notion of how we think our life is, and how life works, because reality is what we make of it. And as a man thinks, so is he, right? We have a lot more control over everything around us, because everything around us and the way we interact with it is all up in our head. How we deal, how we react, what our relationship is to everything. And there's layers and layers and layers of it. Anyway, that's enough to get started, I guess. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was interesting. Let me know your thoughts on it, and I'll catch you later.